thank you for being very patient with this. And this is called, so we're going to be talking about the investment because we are seeing an influx, especially in the past few, couple years. There's more capital flowing from China specifically to here. And these are experts. So I'm going to let each panelist just speak really quick about yourself and your fund.
Should I get started?
Yes, go ahead.
Cool. So hi everybody here. My name is Ren, director at Lab 360. We are a dedicated incubator focused on smart hardware here in the Silicon Valley with 2 offices, one in San Francisco and one in Sunnyvale. Personally, I actually came from a very different background. I was an MD and PH. Well, just like everybody else, ended up with healthcare IT and then finally high tech when I moved to the Bay Area.
Hi, I'm Lei. I'm on the investment team of SAIC Capital, which is the venture capital investment arm of Shanghai Automotive Industrial Group, which is the largest automaker in China. So we're a 100 million fund. We're investing in emerging tech surrounding around the future of cars, including from autonomous driving, connected cars, to artificial intelligence technologies like natural language processing, to IoT. Some disruptive business models, so anything that's in the transportation space, we're looking at it. And then I think it's very interesting that I represent like a state-owned enterprise and investing in U.S. with a venture fund. So I'll talk about a little bit more about that. Previously, I worked at Bain company, so I was based in Hong Kong and doing business and helping private equity shop as well as multinational companies, especially U.S. companies, looking at deals in China.
Hi, my name is Jasin. I'm with a firm called DNA Partners. We focus on the digital media supply chain side, so like iTunes, but open architecture. DNA because we invest in the entrepreneurial spirit of people, so investing in people. And we're a seed round, and we do rounds of around $50,000 to $500,000. And our markets are United States and China. And my background primarily is 20 plus years now in the mobile industry. Worked for 2 mobile operators, 1 national, 1 international. 2 startups in the mobile software industry with decent exits, and currently advising the State Department on 5G initiatives for spectrum allocation between USA and China. And what else? I'm excited to be here. And I wanted to take a moment. I talked to Shirley a little bit about this, so if we could interview the group a little bit so we know who's in the audience. So just like 2, 3 questions, something about that. So how many people here have international initiatives, or you're from international area? So we could say 50%. How many of those people want to do business with China? Okay, that's a great amount. So please feel free to talk to me afterwards about anything you want to do in China. And then I'm going to have Jerry and Henry raise their hands as well. So those 2 guys in black, the Chinese men in black, they talk to them about China as well as far as what's going on. And then how many people consider themselves technological or non-technological? So technological. Half, okay. So we'll assume the other half is non-technological. Okay, so great. We got a well-balanced group here.
Okay.
And Sherry, yeah, please take this
mic
so everyone can hear you.
Okay, yes,
Sure.
Everybody can
Please.
hear me. No, everybody can hear me. So you guys hold your Yeah, you're fine, right? Okay. So we're talking about China. So let's cut out the crap, okay? I've been seeing personally, because I speak a lot in China. My space is very much mobile advertising for mobile games, mobile application for monetization and user acquisition. So I've been involved in some of the advices to the investors. And since last year, there's a humongous interest, okay, beyond any of your imagination in AR and VR, especially in China. And GDC is going on, as you guys know, okay? Walking on the Market Street and Mission Street, I bump into any Chinese from China, and if in 3 minutes they don't talk about investment in VR, the sun should be coming from the west, okay? Yeah. So sure enough, when I was talking to them, sure enough, these 2 are also interested in the AR, VR kind of space. It's almost like a bubble, but we don't know how bubble it is, okay? And they were interested. But last year, it was all about smart devices, connected cars, right? So we're going to be talking about what's the kind of trend that you guys see. 360, by the way, some of you probably don't know. 360 is one of the top internet companies in China, very successful. So they're doing incubation and investment also. And like she said, and they're investing a huge investment arm, and then there are state-owned corporate behind it. Of course, so what kind of trend do you see? Let's just say in the past few months, and what's the hottest trend going on?
Yeah, I like that VR topic. Actually, I was trying to close a deal as we speak now to a VR early stage startup. But I mean, in terms of the trends, I'll just get the conversation started. You guys feel free to chime in. Well, I see two kinds of Chinese partners here in the Bay Area, especially. One is more strategic, kind of like oriented. The other is more kind of like financial oriented. Strategic investors, like those Chinese tech companies, they care less about kind of like, well, how many times of exit I can get, but more about whether this is related to my core competency back in China. They're more interested in the technology, the know-how, and then the market, and then the ideas. And then if you're interested in bring your business to China, they can potentially help. Financial investors, where we as an incubator also do on the side, is more about trying to find best local talents who can bring the business to scale, and then we'll help them just grow by bringing in capitals as well as resources. So that's kind of like the two major type of Chinese investors that I've noticed, and I believe the trend is actually gonna last for a while. And then for the first kind, for strategic investors, one thing I've noticed, I'm not sure if you two would agree, is that they're actually moving toward a little bit later in terms of investment stage. They're more B round and plus is more about their sweet spot. Financial investors are actually moving further up of the value chain. Their sweet spot is more about early stage startups.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's just how many people are doing AR, VR related startup right now? A few hands. That's very good. Yeah, they want to talk to you.
I'm just going to talk a little bit about macro, and really, she talked about the private sector and internet giants investing in the U.S., but I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about the government sector. So if you look at China has been investing outbound, overseas for a long time, but just because I think there are several reasons why a lot of government or state-owned companies coming to the States and started to invest in early. First of all, is the China economy is kind of slowing down comparing to the past decade for like double-digit growth, and then also traditionally China, like government or state-owned company, invest in energy infrastructure and a lot of those traditional sectors, and now we're seeing a slow and cheaper in commodity, and so we don't really see a high growth, and that's why when we're looking at go outside and we wanted to still find high growth opportunities. Now venture is a pretty good investment for us, and if you look at the past experience, we've been doing private equity deals for a long time. I think there's the stats saying that over the past 2 years or so, there were like 250 million or billion US dollars invested in private equity deals, but failed. Because there was lack of understanding of the local markets and culture and all that. So nowadays, I think a lot of the state-owned companies realized that and started to really just hold minority shares in companies, right? To really learn about business technology and how they manage their local talents in a way that we could learn from it. And then when the time comes, then we can actually help them to expand into China and open up the sales channels. So I think that's what the trend that I've seen from a government or state-owned enterprise sector.
The larger, later stage.
Later stage or B round is our sweet spot, just like the corporate funds. We look at C round, A round deals as well, but really just we wanted to be minorities.
In other words, they don't usually lead. So
Yeah.
you startups founders, you need to understand, they don't lead. They will follow some other investors who already take the lead, and they will follow up. So when you look for them, try to find your lead investor first. Don't go to them for the lead.
I'd like to bring a perspective of I consider myself to try to be out in the field very, very often in the United States and China. So I'm in China about 20-30% of my time. And I like to look at it from the top down and the bottom up. Top down, obviously, government and large company and state-owned initiatives. I would just say that in the last 5 years has been getting more dynamic in general. The government is very serious about their ministry and trying to allocate spectrum and more frequencies for 5G, and that's just a big, great initiative. And also, I would say that this is an example that state organization investing in a corporation to make investments in the United States. That's a really big change. It's usually the state investing in whatever they want to invest in. So that's really top-down changes. The regulatory issues with finance and legal associated with incorporation from a large company to a small company is also changing a lot. The regulations in China are starting to be, there's more parameters. And then I would say off the record, meaning not me off the record, but off the record in China, is reputation has been going a lot further as well. So ethics associated with how you conduct business with Chinese to Chinese is also going a lot longer, or a lot more stand-up, let's say. So the entrepreneurs that want to do it right the first time, they want to make sure it can do it right the second time. So a lot less the unregulated issues that we usually see, like, oh, is there 2 sets of books or whatever? No, we're really seeing a lot less of that from the ground up as well. So from the bottom up of me participating in developer associations or hackathons in the United States and in China, it's great that it's bridging back and forth. There is a more fluid conduit, and that has not happened in the last. That's only happened in the last 3 years. So it's very, very short. But what's happening is it's compounding faster. And companies like 360, if they're going to open up a Silicon Valley office, that's going to be great. That compounds the conduit even faster. And if they're going to do smaller investments. And then one more note, that you can't really read about. It's hard to get research and data from China, even in China. Even Chinese have a hard time. Is that there are a lot more seed investors, and those seed investors are a lot from second and third tier generations that had a lot of money from their parents, and they're just making investments. So that's a little bit where seed's coming from, and that will not be on the record anywhere.
Okay, so we were talking about, there's no doubt there's a lot of capital, okay? We got that message across. But I think because I'm similar, from the ground up and advice to many startups, you guys are interested. If you have a market to China and you're looking at that and looking to scale, but these investors from China, and I was very blunt with them, you need to learn how to navigate the damn process, okay? It's not easy navigate. They're full of landmines, and we were talking about management differences, mentality. Western management and Chinese management is very different, okay? And they're not that transparent. So you need to figure out what's the right one, and you need to check out the background. Do your own due diligence. A lot of investors, like Joe said, like you guys said, they invest in the early stage, but you don't know because they can enlarge, make themselves larger than life, and I've seen plenty of that. So do your background check. Usually investors check your background, but you really need to check the background, except the big ones that have a lot of reputations. So these kind of navigation mentality, management styles and process, and the transparency, how do you communicate? These are the things, and aside from some regulation issues.
Yeah, I just want a quick comment there. I very much agree with what Shirley just mentioned. A quick tip to startups here is that when you're talking with Chinese investors, always ask about your decision flow. Whether you make a decision here locally as a local team, or you actually have an investment committee in China, right, which basically means all the paperwork, the attorneys that you're going to talk with are going to be based in Beijing or Shanghai or Hong Kong. That's actually a very critical question to ask, because it basically means whether they can make a decision within 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or it's going to be 3 months.
Yeah, so for state-owned venture or government ventures, just don't expect a quick close. It's always a long process. But also, that's our value proposition, is that we can help you to navigate the regulation, or can help you navigate the market in a way that there are some of the technologies or some of the sectors as a foreign entity you can never enter. That's just the regulation. So we'll help you with that. So, but on the other hand, you have to be patient with us because we are like, there are millions of people over there in China, and then you have to balance between each of the departments, and then that's just very, very hard.
Yeah, I just want to say, Shirley's point is well taken, but that can translate to any country and any situation where you're trying to figure out the reputation of the person you're doing business with in any country. And is the transparency expectation the same? No, you're not always going to be calibrated exactly the same. So, you're trying to figure out their past. When you're communicating with them in the present, try to set expectations of this is what our objectives are, our milestones, this is what we want to accomplish. And you got to, just really try to be more black and white on that. So when you're 1 year, 2 years down the line, they're not saying, yeah, but you said this and you said that. So that goes with any intercultural situation.
Yeah. To add on to that, I think it's also about how you tell your story and the way that you communicate your story. Because the way you communicate here in the States is very different to comparing to Chinese investor expectations of what they want to hear. So it's always good to have some internal experts tell you or to guide you through, this is the storyline that you wanted to communicate, even though it's the same story, right? But it's just gonna be different storytelling. So that's kind of the arts sometimes.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of like how to tell a story to attract Chinese investors, I'm not sure if I'm jumping too quick into our next topic here, but one benefit of having Chinese strategic investors is that because China is such a big market, they have a lot of consumer-driven kind of like needs and data and trends. So talking to Chinese investors will in some way help you validate whether your business idea is actually a good and valid one. That's a huge value add that I see from Chinese investors to bring in the customers to help you land onto that market, do the local deals, and also to basically learn how to do promotions in another country with people with another culture.
So understand your investors, right? Understand what their market is, and then just be very patient and the communication skill. And we were talking about earlier negotiation. Chinese people are known to do echo the price and negotiation, cut the deal. So you need to be prepared because they're going to come really aggressive and really cut your price when you negotiate. When you get to the point to even negotiate the term sheet. So be very aware of that, expect that. And I've been through some of the process and doing the M&A, and then to the point that sometimes I think, wow, the investor really cut it so low, in some sense, it almost constitutes like insult to the entrepreneurs. So you need to be patient, and you just need to take that out of your mind, and then just go back and haggle with them. It's an art, negotiation, no matter where, it's an art.
There's something that I learned real quick. This is just doing business with China for over 10 years now in general, is that a lot of the times, we always in the United States, we're always looking for a win-win, right? That's been our phrase for a long time here. Well, China also wants a win-win, but they usually want it free. They want to negotiate with you free the first time because the market's so big. They're like, okay, if we do business with you, we want it free for a little while. And you're like, well, I can't do business for free. And so what I've learned is if you say no to the free 3 times, then there's a whole new level of respect. So, but you've got to have that strong, mature discipline and really be confident in your product and service and your team and say, no, I won't do free. I just won't do it. So I'll move on, and then if you say no to free 3 times, and I'm really being general here, then they'll circle back to you. If they really need the product and service, then they'll circle back, and then we'll go for the win-win.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what Shirley and Joe just mentioned are more about when you are doing a local deals in China, or when you are actually in China. But when we're talking about the companies or I'm not sure funds that actually have a local footprint here, a lot of the time we do business just as Americans do. I'll just use Lab360 as an example. We use SAFE just as Y Combinator. We just use convertible note as many of the other early stage startups. But when you're moving on to later stage or you're trying to do a JV in China, you do have to pay attention to what they just mentioned.
There's a difference. In other words, so there are some of the bigger firms from China, and they have a professional investors here, So, even they may not invest in your startup, but it's always good to get advices of people who have a lot of experiences in this. I think that's what it boils down to. Again, the point is that there are a lot of loose capitals come here, and I can guarantee you many of them are not professional management or investors. So you need to understand. So always reach out with people who have this kind of experience and just ask for advices, to give you in that process.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may not be the best for you, and then
Yeah.
you need to know so that you protect yourself and your interest.
Yeah, and then I would say another thing is like for a startup, focus on your technology, because one of the biggest reasons why we're investing in the States because we're looking at this advanced technology that we wanted to introduce and get it back to China, right? So if you can't build a great product, you can't build a technology company that holds up a barrier of entry, then everybody in China can copy and paste, right? There's just so many competition in China, you can't just win the market. So I would just give you a very quick example of, I don't know if you, okay, so you've heard of Mobileye, right? So that big company that is really doing computer vision on that, right? So it took them like 7 years to build up the technology. Even today, nobody can compete with them because they're just so good that they give you a black box and say, hey, test it. If you like it, take it. Doesn't like it, just leave it there. So I think that's the mentality for a lot of the startups that you need to have, because at the end of the day, technology wins.
Yep. I mean, I want to, there's a formula for Silicon Valley, and it's just different than what, she was just saying. Generally speaking, another generalization, and someone could disagree with me, but in Silicon Valley, the venture capital community prioritizes typically like this, in 3 categories. You invest in the people, number 1, because the people make the product. Product, number 2. The product is the intellectual property, that's the technology. And the marketplace, number 3. And the marketplace equates to geography, right? Where is this going to be launched? And timing. So you look at Facebook versus Friendster, right? The timing is much different, but the concept is exactly the same. And the geographies are different. So, just people, product, and marketplace. But, there's a lot of tendency from around the world that, let's just look at the product, the intellectual property that's going to be investing in. We can always fire the people and we can keep the intellectual property and that's sound and we can leverage that worldwide. But with Silicon Valley, it's kind of like, hey, we know that the people make the product and then they can pivot the product if need be. So it's just a little more agile. It's not right or wrong, it's just philosophical.
Yeah, you need to really protect your IP to be very defensible because they are really quick in China. They copy really, really quick. If you don't have a really strong defensible IP, you better not have tried that.
Yeah, I actually have to tell you a story. My son worked at a startup called Lift Labs, which made a spoon with a sensor in it. He's an engineering intern for people with Parkinson's. And it got bought by Sergey Brin, whose mother happens to have Parkinson's, and who knows, I don't know the amount of money, but it got bought last year by Sergey Brin, and of course they spent months and months and months, and now it's part of Google. My son was at CES, he saw an exact replica of this spoon for a quarter of the price, and when he mentioned Lyft, the guy literally turned bright red, and he said, we were hoping you wouldn't notice. And the guy actually admitted to him that they got the spoon, they took it over to China, they copied it, and now they're manufacturing it. And my son said in some ways it even might have worked better for a quarter of the price. But that's an example.
Right. So. Even if it's defensible, it still happens. So you need to really figure out a way. Because we can talk 3 hours. Yeah, we can help you. Right. So we are cutting short.
We have time for a question?
Yeah, for questions.
Okay.
Yes,
sure.
you go ahead.
Yeah. So I've been living in China for 12 years.
Okay. Oh, great.
Stand up, please, and say your name and company name.
My name is George Landry. I'm from Southern Prime. And I'd like to ask the panel how you guys would feel about opening up the Chinese market via fully decentralized, blockchain-based censorship circumvention technologies.
Okay. That's a pretty...
Why don't we just say it like this? Awesome.
Okay, you want to address?
I don't want to take a bunch of time in this scenario. I'd be glad to talk to you offline. If the other panelists want to comment, great.
Sure, I'd love to get the...
Okay, so it's a blockchain, you open up the Chinese market?
Yeah, well, you open it up, because one of the major reasons why foreign enterprise have such a hard time
Right.
defending their IP and
Right.
competing in China
Uh-huh.
is because of the firewall. right? And so, for example, why is there no Twitter or Facebook in China? It's not just about, harmony in the society. It's also about protecting Renren and Weibo and all
Yes.
those other
Yes.
Yeah, you
local
have to be
players.
careful though. So the times are changing, but Google did get kicked out, and Microsoft did not. So one played the route that the government wanted them to go. So
Right.
Microsoft did whatever the government wanted, and Google did whatever they wanted to do, and they got kicked out.
So why not break down the firewall?
Not
So-
only you cannot break down, sorry for that, because they also announced recently, not only that, everybody who wants to do business in China, you have to use their server, period.
Right.
You can kind of go through Taiwan, Chungwang.
No, you have to use your server.
No, you
You have to use your
Joe's
server.
got the pass.
you can use blockchains that are fully decentralized, where there is no single point of failure, right? Things like distributed hash tables. You can use, Bitcoin as a blockchain, and it's very hard to censor those types of technologies because there's millions of users, and so in order to block it, you have to block
Yep.
So
all
you
servers.
basically want to disrupt the wall. Great, let's talk about it.
So maybe go to Opera browser. They have a pretty cool system on the back end, so something to consider.
No, I'm familiar with the technology.
Yeah.
I'd say we're all idealists sometimes, but then at the same time we're doing business. You have to basically just be practical sometimes and see there is a firewall in China, and that's something that we all just need to know. I'll just use 360 as an example. Fortunate and unfortunate, when Google leave, Qihoo 360 took over, and we are now the largest Android-based app distributor in China. That's fortunate and unfortunate. Just like Joe just mentioned, Google got kicked out. They're actually trying to get back. But Facebook, they are actually very actively doing their kind of like propagation, whatever, in China. And I know Twitter is doing the same thing. So maybe in the near future, we might see those two things in China. But whether that's going to happen at all, I don't know. But what I do know is if you really want to do business in China, you have to basically take something as granted.
Yeah, this is right.
And go to cloudflare.com. Cloudflare, and they got a whole private internet service, and Baidu just did a biz dev deal with them to use their software on their servers. So
Okay.
it's changing. Your instinct is right, but it's really dangerous. That's all I'm going to say.
It's a good idea, yeah, but yes, go ahead.
From what I have understood, when you're investing, China is a huge market, but a lot of us want to go international. And what I have understood from some of the successful companies or even investors who have gone down to China is that they have created teams in China. So they're hiring people who understand the market, the locals, the culture, everything. They're managing from here. So it's not necessarily franchise out, but they have a team built in there. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of Chinese investors are basically
Brandon, can you
following
come up
what
here to me
necessarily
while
we
she's
do.
talking?
How do you feel about that? Like, do you think there are still companies that are investors?
So to your first question, in order for you to do business in China, it's always good to have local support because that's how you navigate through the enterprise if you're in enterprise, right? So for example, take like SAIC for example. When we look at a product or a company that wanted to collaborate with, we always want to speak to a Chinese person who really spent times in China that understand the needs. So that's just, I think it's a very natural move if you wanted to do business in China. That's why you need strategic partners to help you to navigate and set up the structures and so forth. And then to your second question, we're not leading or just following. I think my previous point is that we see in failures leading the deals, right? When we take this lesson, we wanted to be smarter this time. We want to learn from the best, and that's why we're holding minority. We wanted to co-invest with great financial investor like Andres and
So I'm gonna pass this to Ren. Yeah, you guys want to
Sure.
Sorry.
So, no worry. So I think for the first part, well, it's also about if you're doing it by yourself. The way that we would advise teams to do that is to keep your R&D and core technology teams here in the U.S. and then hire local teams for marketing and sales in China. That's actually usually how we see startups do it. And then the latter part, why we prefer kind of like being a follower rather than lead the ground. Well, if you just look back and see when the Chinese money started booming, especially in the venture capital world, it's around 2013. So Chinese money is still fairly new in the U.S. and in the Silicon Valley for venture capital kind of like investment. we would like to go through that learning curve by ourselves as well and gradually increase the investment size. I've seen Chinese companies lead a Series B or later equity round before, but it's really about less than 10% of the time.
All right, let's give a round of applause for our judges.